Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. Welcome back, everybody. So we are going to be talking about user training and education during this session. My name is Christina Baer. I'm from the University of Massachusetts Chan Medical School in Worcester, Mass. And I am a co-chair of the training and education group, along with Kate Luby-Phelps, who's here virtually with us today. Kate's going to do the working group overview, and then we have a series of short talks from our invited speakers all about user training and education efforts that are specifically targeted to different audiences. And then we're hoping to have a discussion at the end. I'm going to invite the working group members who are here in the audience to come on down for that discussion too. So we'll have a little bit of time for that, and then we're going to adjourn for our group photo and lunch. So let me turn it over to Kate. Are you all set, Kate?
Yep, I think so. I'm going to thank you very much for the introduction. I'm going to try to share my, there we go. Everybody should be able to see that. Okay, good. So I am, as Christina said, the co-chair of the Training and Education Working Group, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of the working group and some of its activities. We have many members who are listed on this slide. We have members not only from the United States, but also from Canada and Mexico. We have at least 2 members from Europe, and we're always interested in people who want to join. There's plenty to do. And if you'd like to join, I put the email address over here, contact@Bioimaging North America, and put T&E Working Group in the subject line, and then give us your information and what you're interested in, and we'd love to talk with you. So in terms of our activities and initiatives, one of the most prominent and ongoing has been the virtual exchange of experience, which we're designated EOE, which has been happening monthly since about 2021. And we do take time off for holidays and summers, just because we don't get much viewership in those time slots. But the upcoming ones that I'd like to highlight are on October 10th. We're going to have an extended session, which is a pedagogy workshop presented by Sylvie, whose last name I'm going to mangle, Laguyade, and Rhonda Powell. And then December 11th, we're going to have another workshop by Dina from Northwestern, on AI tools in microscopy. And so these will both be longer than the usual 1-hour session. And we hope that you'll be, but they'll be in the same time slot. So we hope that you'll be able to join us for one of these. We're always open to topic suggestions, and I put a QR code here on the screen so that this takes you to a Google form where you can provide topics suggestions for the EOEs, future EOEs. We also have in-person EOEs. Of 2 types. One is pop-up EOEs like that happen at meetings like this one. We've had them at ASCB and ADRF. And then the other type of pop-ups, the other type of EOEs that we have are one-on-ones. So pop-up exchange of experiences to date, or at least in 2024, they've been growing over the past several years. We've had 145 participants in 9 different workshops. And they will be, a lot of them will be this Friday after the end of the official meeting. And we've done a total of 250 of these since 2022. And in terms of one-on-one exchange of experiences, this provides the logistical support for people to travel by themselves to a distant core facility where they want to learn something or observe something or test a piece of equipment. And up till now, we have we've sponsored a total of 21 of these since 2023. And the links to apply for this type of support are available on the BINA website. Oops. Okay, why can't I change my slide? There we go. Okay. Another ongoing initiative is translation of key documents in microscopy. And this is not only the T&E working group, but also people from the Image Informatics working group and other people around the globe, actually, who are kind of sharing experiences and working together on getting key documents translated. We've worked out an efficient methodology using the Transifex, and I've put the link to Transifex here on the slide if you have time to. It's very simple, transifex.com, which is a very useful tool for facilitating translation between different languages. We've also developed a document that shows tips for translating YouTube videos and another document that details our ongoing translation efforts. These are both located on the T&E page of the BINA website. When a document is finished, it's put into the T&E online database. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide when we get there. But I want to say first that we really welcome any native or fluent speakers to help with this effort. Another initiative that's been ongoing this year is leadership and management training. Our goal was to provide an affordable and modular approach to training people with the skills they need to either run a core facility, become able to run a core facility in the future, or operate as a staff member at a core facility. And the application and the description of the program and applications are also available on the BINA website at this link. Basically, the courses, as it is this year, present 5 topics relevant to core facility management. This involves a 2-hour lecture by the company we're collaborating with, Soft Skills Incorporated, and then followed by a week later, a 1-hour practicum facilitated by members of the BINA T&E working group. And this year also something that's new is that we are offering certification for anyone who completes all 5 of these modules. And then we intend to offer this again next year in some format. In general, you can find other T&E Training and Education Working Group resources on the BINA website at this address. Also, we continue to be involved in the microscopydb.io project. This was BINA is one of the founding organizations in developing microscopydb. And the idea is to share searchable content related to microscopy online in a central location. And you don't search it directly on the website. You go to one of the partner websites, and they have portals so that you can search the databases. And we currently have grown very nicely to 17 international partner websites. The IP address for the URL for microscopydb is shown here. Again, very simple. And there are separate databases for jobs, current events, online training resources, and tools. The tools are things for calibration and measurement mostly at the moment. The T&E working group maintains and somewhat curates the online training resources database. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Oh, no, there isn't a next slide. Sorry. And I wanted to highlight, I'm trying to get through in 5 minutes. I want to highlight the events that we're sponsoring at this Congress. One is on Friday, the Spatial Omics EOE that's being presented by Christina. And today we have 3 topic tables at lunch: the pedagogy, hosting courses, and leadership and management course, if you want more information about any of those things. So these things are all continuing in 2025, but if there's something else you think we should be doing, use the QR code to fill out the Google form. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kate. Sylvie, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, we can jump right to you. So next up will be Sylvie Laguiadere, who will be presenting virtually for us on a topic surrounding pedagogy. And I'm hoping that we can hold our questions for the speakers till the end, because we are packed in this session. So we will have time at the end for questions. So please hold those thoughts. Thank you so much, Sylvie.
Hey, great. Thank you very much. So I'm also going to try and keep this on time. So I would like you all to take your phones and scan this thing. Please do that. So while you're doing this, I can mention that at the top of each slide, the website menti.com will be shown. So if you want to jump in later, you will have the site here and the code. But so has everyone accessed the website now? You should have, when you access the website, you should have a big green arrow on your phone screen. Okay, so again, you can jump anytime with this code at the top. So I will start now. So I know that pedagogy is not a word that is used in all languages very often, even though it exists in French. I'm French. People use it a lot, so everybody knows what pedagogy is. But I think in English it's not used it's not so common to use it. So pedagogy is basically the study of how we learn. And what hurts is why we don't learn when we would like to learn. And also it's the study of how to teach with effect, so effectively. So effectively actually change the person you're teaching to. So now I have a question for you. So I hope that everybody has opened the Menti. Otherwise, go to menti.com on your phone and use this code. So I would like you to tell me, you have 25 characters. I would like you to tell me, when researchers come to you for training at your core facility, what do you think their goals are? Ah, great. I get answers straight away. So this is very nice. I'm checking the time at the same time. So they want to take a picture. They want to get pictures. They want to use the microscope. Oh, they want to master things. Maybe they want fast access. Okay, they want to get things done. Oh, I know that one. That hurts, really. Minimize the learning time. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so now we get a few words that show up a little bit more. And what we can see is that those that are more stable are data, results, pretty picture. Okay, let's stop the thing now so it stops moving. I think you got the idea. Mostly people want result and they want data. So now if I change, thank you very much for your answers. Now if I change and I said, okay, a researcher comes to you at your core facility and they want a training. What are your goals with this training? What do you want from the training? All right, so we have immediately some stuff coming up. We want to minimize future work. I understand that. We want to teach microscopy principle. We'd like to get them to produce reproducible data. We would like them to be competent, and we would like them to be independent. These are those that show up. We want them to understand, right? So lots of words there. It's super cool that you're answering so quickly. And clearly, we're asking for competency and independence. So thank you very much. Now I move on. So super for these very quick answers. And as you can see, even according to ourselves, who train people on microscopy, the goal of the trainer and the trainee are different. And that creates a lot of misunderstanding. So I think it is very important that we clarify for ourselves, to start with, the goals that we have for the training. And once we clarify the goals, we should share with the user. So we should explain to the user, I am going to train you to do this and this and this and this. And you do this before the training. This is a very powerful way to actually help the user learn and structure the knowledge in their mind. Instead of receiving a shower of information, they're going to be able to make blocks with it. And this has been shown because pedagogy is a 50-year-old field of research. So this has been shown actually to have a very strong effect on the way people learn. It helps them learn, okay? So one great advantage of defining the goals is that first, it's clear for yourself. And then it's also clear for the user if you share it with them, and it aligns everybody's expectations. So we do not start the training with a mismatch. Now we start with the same goal, which creates a team feeling. This is really important. So you're not working against each other, you're working together. And it has also the great advantage that it clarifies what is not included in your training. And it is completely up to you how you design your training, and you don't have pretty much no two trainings that are the same across different facilities in the world. But it is important then to know that in your facility, you might want to say, I do not want to know about sample preparation, for example. I'm not going to teach you sample preparation, or I'm not going to teach you some sort of image analysis. I may give you some advice about this, but I'm not going to teach you this. And it's totally valid. It's up to you, but you have to define it. And so it's important for the user to know what is not included in the training, so that they know that they have to go and get this training somewhere else, okay? So that they are prepared. So pedagogy shows that well-defined goals that are announced before the teaching actually help the students learn. So this is the first thing. If you want to improve your training, write down your goals and share it with your users. It's very easy. So now I have another little question, and I would like to know, move this little window, how can you tell if your users have learned what you taught them? Please enter in the Menti. Oh, yes, that's a big one. We ask questions, we test them. Yes, we have demos to question. They take great images. So if they take great images, certainly it means that they know. It depends what we mean with great images. We have to test them. And as you can see, we test their independence, maybe. We ask them questions, we quiz them. I can see lots of very interesting words, assessments, and assessments is a key word in pedagogy. So very good. So you can see that the terms that come back mostly are testing, asking questions. This is so important. So thank you very much for your answers. So assessments are the core of pedagogy. You need to assess if the training goal that you have written and you have shared with your users in the previous slide, if they are reached. So you have to assess. And this is a common mistake to think that understanding and learning are the same. They're actually not the same. So in front of you, you have PhD students, you have people who have a PhD, they are postdocs, for example. If you show them something or you explain something to them, they will definitely understand. But doesn't mean that they are going to learn. So for them to learn and for you to be sure that they learn, you have to check by asking them questions. And this doesn't mean an exam at the end, okay? It's not like we always think about assessment like a test or something. No, I'm showing you how to turn on the machine. Now I'm turning it off. Please do it, okay? You give them a chance to practice and you give them a chance to show you. You give them a chance to explain to you the concepts that you have explained already. So assessing is embedded. Oh, interesting. I get some something. Assessing is embedded throughout the training. It's a very gentle thing. It's not stressful for the students, but it tells you that they have actually learned. So you need to formulate these goals that you have written. They have to be formulated in a special way. They need to be action verbs, okay? And these actions are actually describing what the users will be able to do at the end of your training. So maybe they will be able to explain, they will be able to show, they will be able to calculate. So when you write your goals, you start with an action verb that is an action that the user is going to do. So that means that you cannot use verbs like, I want them to understand this, I want them to learn this, or I want them to know this. Why? They cannot show you that they have learned. They can explain something to you. If they can explain something to you, they definitely have learned and they have understood. But do not start your goals with understand, know, and learn. No, it has to be some actions that they have to do. And then simply to assess if your users have learned, you ask them to do exactly the things that you have written in your goals. So it's a very simple technique which will definitely improve the quality of your training. Write the goals and then assess exactly that. So they will have to explain, show, and calculate. So here is an example. After the training, the users should be able to identify saturation in images. They should be able to explain how they can eliminate different ways they can eliminate saturation. And they should be able to explain the consequences of saturating images, right? These are action verbs, and this is something that they can show you and explain to you. And then you know that they have really understood and learned. Okay, so now I have a little quiz for you guys, or not a quiz, but a little survey type thing. I would like to know where you learned your current microscopy knowledge and skills. Where did they come from? So did you have a colleague showing you how to use the microscope? This is how you learned a lot of things. Maybe you learned at the facility or at a company. Maybe you learned by doing. And then maybe you realized you were missing some information, so you checked YouTube or some articles. And maybe you went to a conference or course where you were given knowledge, but no one was checking if you were learning. And maybe you went to a course where actually the course people were actually showing you that they were checking that you were learning. So now what I see is that in these answers is that most people have been trained by someone, and then they have learned by doing, and then they have tried to complete their knowledge by themselves. And then I can see this is really nice that some people have gone to a microscopy course where they were actually assessed that their learning was gone. And then I see someone who is other, and then I'm very curious to know what it is. So please write in the chat what the other is. But I mean, these results are very, very typical. Most people at core facilities, including myself, are in this situation where, you know, we are trained by someone and we slowly develop, and then we become core facility people and we start teaching others. And would you ever send your kids to a school where the math teacher has never gone to a math course? Seriously, I do not understand why we have this situation at the highest level of education where the people who train the PhD students and the researchers have not themselves gone to a structured, have not received a structured education in the technology they teach. And I'm saying this without judgment. I am exactly in this situation. And I think it's like most people are in that case. It's very rare that people have actually first gone through some education, structured education, and then started teaching. And I think this is not okay. I don't think that things should be organized that way. So I'm in for changing that. Now I have another question for you. Your teaching knowledge and skills now, where did you get it from? Did you learn by doing? Did you go through internet and books and see how you could structure your training? Did you actually get a pedagogy course or a workshop or something like this? Or did you actually get a pedagogy course where you were assessed? And there's also another, there's a couple of others. So that's pretty cool. Oh, thank you for putting things in the chat. Now I'm looking forward to seeing what it is. Yeah, so exactly. So these answers are very typical, and it's again the same thing. We are learning by doing, and again it's the same thing. You send your kids, and the math teacher has never had any teaching about teaching. I don't think it's okay. I hope this will change in the future, but this is the reality right now. I think it's important that we realize it. Vanessa, yes, am I short of time?
Yes, we're just giving you a quick 1-minute warning, Sylvie.
Okay, thank you. This is the end, actually. So I want to say that I think that a very good way to improve the learning outcomes of microscopy training is to make sure that facility staff receive structured education in microscopy and a structured education in pedagogy. And I think this would change a lot of things for users and also for the facility staff. Actually, it would make their life easier. We wrote an article about this last year. You're very welcome to scan this, have a look, and there is like a lot more about how to improve your training, very practical things about how to improve your training if you're training people in microscopy. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. Lots of applause here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We're going to move right on to our next speaker, and we'll have questions, I'm sure, for Sylvie at the end. So Abhishek Kumar is going to join us up here and going to talk to us today about implementing bootcamp style learning experiences.
Thanks, Christina, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm not going to share anything new because you all are here because in part you do some sort of teaching and dissemination of all sorts of microscopy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate some of the things we do and basically give you some examples where it works, where it doesn't work. So don't expect to learn anything in next 20 minutes. So it's just idea is just to reinforce some of these things we have been doing. So I'm Abhishek Kumar. I'm just new assistant professor here at University of Wisconsin-Madison, but I'm also affiliated to Marine Biological Laboratory. Some of you have heard about Marine Biological Laboratory. Some of you are heavily involved in teaching courses. Some of you have taken courses. So I'm going to use MBL as an example, but there are other places like Cold Spring Harbor and some other places they are doing these kind of courses. So certainly structured way of learning is very important. Nobody can argue that, but in many cases, we don't have time to go and do another master's degree or PhD degree or take a semester-long course. So I'm going to start with this video. It's 10 years old, but it reflects what this teaching is all about. And in these questions, what Sylvia really set the ground pretty well. And most of us, we answered that learning by doing. And this is one example how we can learn and not only acquire knowledge, but also acquire this confidence. And I'll give you an example as you guys are watching this video. When I still very well remember, and when I first learn how to drive car, that experience was kind of mind-boggling because I knew how it works and all these things, all the sequence, but once I put my hands on behind the wheel, suddenly my hand, eye, mind, coordination, everything failed. I didn't know what to do. And that's what we do, basically. Same thing happens to me for microscopes. There are so many different types of microscopes. Once you see these microscopes, I get a little bit intimidated. But once you start getting your hands dirty, and sometimes we make optics dirty as well, we get more confident, we develop some muscle memory, and then we prime ourselves to utilize that technology, to use that microscope optimal way. So I also wanted to highlight Chris Wood. He suggested to use the word demystifying, and it resonates very well with me because we are really, by doing this hands-on experience, we are demystifying some of these things which before till then it becomes very kind of a rocket science, but it's not. This is one example. Hari Shroff, I was a postdoc with him. He's now at Genelia. Some of you know him well. He and I were invited to teach this microscopy course at Bangalore microscopy course. And as a part of this course, we had to offer this project for 2 days. And we decided to offer this project, how to build a light sheet microscope. And that time, some of you, if you remember, there were not many commercial systems. There are few open source software systems where people can build this thing. So we thought that this will be a good project, learning project for us, Hari and me, to see if we can build this. We thought that nobody is going to sign up and we'll get 2 days off, but 3 students, they signed up. And I give them credit, they had never touched a microscope before coming to this course. So they were all biology graduate students, but they wanted to build a microscope, get their hands dirty. So we started building this, and as you saw in this video, basically we started from scratch, empty optical table, and they built this microscope in 10 hours. And next day they put some samples, they got some data. So this was very educational for 2 reasons. It's educational for us also because when you design these kind of protocols or teaching things, you assume certain things. It might work for you or some other people, but it doesn't work for everybody. So in this teaching process, we also learn what are the things we need to tweak to make it happen. We also got some good ideas from them because they suggested us, oh, why you are doing this alignment this way? Why not that way? So it was a good learning experience for us as well. So I'm really proud of this. And we have done a different, in a different form, this kind of training after that. Only challenge is this kind of training. You can't train 50 people or 100 people at once. It's typically tailored for a small group of participants. But this resonates very well. You can see Hari there. We were all happy because it was a great experience. So But this, again, I just wanted to reiterate that hands-on training is very important for all of us to start not only building our own confidence, but to start using these things optimally. I wanted to highlight MBL microscopy courses. And again, this I'm using as an example, but there are many other places they are running these type of courses. So there are a lot of examples. So please, there is no time to acknowledge everybody, but I wanted to use this as an example. Do we have a laser pointer? Yeah, okay. So there are two flagship courses, like one is AQLM, which is Alexa and Peter, they are course directors. And course directors, they are typically there for 5 years, and then there is a rotation, so they recruit a next batch. And course directors, they are the one they decide curriculum, who will be teaching, how it will be taught, what is going to be scheduled, and everything. So it's a very independent kind of a format. And these courses are for 10 days. So now you can imagine how they are packing semester or 2 semester worth information in 10 days. The second course, and I have listed Allison North, yeah, and Jorg, but I think they are rotating, sorry. Oh, thanks, yeah. So they just finished this course about 4 weeks ago, and Miss Elitano and Wes, they have stepped in to take it to start from next year. This is another flagship course from MBL, and these two courses are going on for almost 40 plus years. So I don't have to tell much, but I wanted to highlight, I copied from Allison's this year's schedule. And you see this starts at 8 a.m. Officially, it ends 10 p.m., but nobody leaves lab 10 p.m. People are there till midnight, 1 a.m. So basically, they extend this day in a fun way. The other thing which is very important for these type of courses, MBL type of courses, it's not just Allison or Jorg. They have an army of very highly trained and good teaching assistants, course assistants, and commercial partners. So I don't think, probably I'm wrong, Allison, correct me, we can do it without having this strong partnership with commercial vendors. So this is another good example how people with vested financial interest and people with motivation to teach can come together and teach next generation of scientists how to use this technology. And that's why I really love these courses, not because they are very intense and all, but also it gives you sets up a good example how we all can work together to train next generation. We have taken, and Louis and Karsten, they have taken this concept of boot camp style teaching, and they have designed or redesigned a course for undergraduate students, UChicago undergraduate students, and you can see in this lab setting, it's a very open concept. So the idea is not to teach you or bombard you with a lot of these techniques and tools and concepts, but also give you opportunity to get hands-on experience and work with your colleagues, peers. So it's a kind of a very social experience, in my opinion. With Ed and I, we designed this course for graduate students. So basically it was 2 weeks microscopy boot camp for UChicago graduate students. They're all cell and molecular biology graduate students. And again, like AQLM and OMIPS, we started with this optical rail system to build this microscope. Thanks. And get their hands dirty. And I also wanted to acknowledge Jennifer Ross. Some of you know her. So she's the one who developed, and you can buy all these components from Thor Lab. So the idea is basically this bootcamp style teaching at MBL is now incorporated in academic settings as well. Light sheet field has exploded. So Gary and I, we started this light sheet workshop where the idea is to start with tutorials because we want to be more inclusive, and then learn about the latest techniques, but also get opportunity to get hands-on experience. And again, this partnership with various companies that plays very important role in this. It's extended hours, so we try to make it fun. And in this case, the reason I'm giving this example, because participants were given certain tasks in a small team. They had to demonstrate how certain light sheet works. So in a way, you are getting outdoor time, but also we are learning. They were also doing some sample prep competition and those kind of things. So basically, we try to blend learning with some fun and outdoor time, because none of us want to spend 15 hours or 16 hours in dark room. So it's a kind of a combination of all these things. We have extended this in partnership with PeerUp, so it's going on. And again, here in my lab, they are learning about a home-built system, which is very, at the same time, they are learning about commercial systems in a greater detail. There are virtual options like MicroTutor, Jennifer Waters and Anna, they are leading that. Brian has started this online way to learn that. I'll play this video. This is also good because he has a way to simulate the light path and all. You can put some components and see what it does, what it doesn't do, all this. So what I'm saying is we need a combination of all these approaches. There is no one approach which works for everybody's. And using all these things, probably we can do much better. I'm missing a lot of people in this acknowledgement, but certainly thanks to CGI, BINA, MBL, all commercial partners, all course directors and all. And there is no age to start. My kids, they love playing with microscopes. So thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Abhishek. Next, we've got Chris Kubu, who's coming up to talk to us about using assessments for testing users and other assorted applications.
Thank you. So I'm going to be talking about one aspect of what Sylvie talked about earlier, and that's about assessing microscopy training. And this is going to be primarily in the context of a core user facility training new users, but hopefully you can see the principles are generally applicable. So I'm going to be using the terms trainee and student interchangeably. It's just the person who's learning how to use the scope. I'm also going to be using the word assessment a lot over the next 10 minutes. So just to remind you and clarify, it's just an education term for a tool that lets you measure something about a student. So it could be a survey or an interview, etc. In core facilities, usually the practical competency of the trainee is assessed at the very end by asking the trainee to actually demonstrate that they know how to use the microscope. That usually happens at the very end of the training, and it's what you have to do to get access to the scope. And that's usually where we sort of leave it. But really, assessments can do a lot more than that. So carefully designed assessments can provide a rich source of information that can tell you about your trainees, can let you know if your training is working or how well it's working, and also give you a quantitative measure of that. So to illustrate, I'm going to show you some data from a study I conducted at my core. All right. So first, I just want to, to first just give you some context for where I'm coming from. I'm at a solo staffed microscopy facility, and I'm at a primarily undergraduate research institution, which is probably a little bit different from most of you. That means that the faculty research at my institution is primarily undergraduate driven. But I want to emphasize here that the training goals are basically the same. I train researchers to use microscopes to conduct multi-year projects to hopefully get high quality publishable data. It just happens that the researchers in my case are undergraduate students. In addition, I'm going to only be telling you about data that we collected basically on a subset of our training. So only 4 of our microscope systems in the center, and only on a subset of the students who are trained on them. And I can explain more about that if you're interested in it. But my main point here is that you don't have to assess everything in your facility. You can just assess the things that you're interested in. All right, I don't have time also to explain the actual training program. Suffice to say, what Sylvie was describing earlier is what we used to sort of design what we were doing. We started out by making learning objectives, which are the things that Sylvie was talking about earlier, those goals. learning goals, and then use that to then develop our training and our assessments. And that's called backwards design, in case you're interested. Again, I can provide more information about that later if you want, or even better, you can attend Sylvie and Rhonda's workshop where you can learn a whole lot. So the students basically began with background readings and then multiple in-person hands-on training sessions. And like most programs, there's going to be a demonstration of practical competency at the end. The student has to show that they can use the scope. But a little bit different, we also implemented that same exact assessment at the very beginning of the training. So before the training had actually happened. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. We also included both a pre and a post survey, which are done online. And these included questions about background information, background knowledge rather, and also about student attitudes and confidence in their microscopy. We could have asked a ton of questions on these, but survey fatigue is a real thing. So we didn't assess everything we possibly could. We just assessed the things that we were interested in. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of data here. We'll start off with the practical competency data, so the students actually demonstrating that they can use the scope. And this was assessed using a standardized rubric with point values. I'm just giving you a summary score here, and then also the pre and post. I'll try to use this for the online audience here, pre and post training assessments. So here we can see that prior to training, the students were scoring relatively low, and after training, they were scoring high. So that's great. We actually have a quantitative measure. We can see, great, our training is actually working. But what we were actually interested in as well is this, oops, I advanced a little bit early, but we were interested in this here, where the students who were coming into the training had varying levels of competency. They weren't all at 0. There was some variation. And so we wanted to take a closer look at this here. Now, these are undergraduate students, so they most likely have not had a prior research experience using a microscope, but they probably have had a microscope in a previous class, previous college class. And so we decided to parse that out, just the pre-training data, looking at students who had had at least one college course that involved a microscope versus those who hadn't. And we can see here that those who had that prior experience were able to score a little bit better. They were doing a little bit better prior to training than those who hadn't. To drill down a little bit more in these data here, we divided up, again, this is just pre-training data, we divided it by task category. So you can see the ones listed here on the left. I'm also going to divide it up by 2 classes of microscope. Of the 4 microscopes we were using, 2 of them were uprights and had relatively simple interfaces. 2 of them were inverted and were more complex, heavily automated systems, a lot more buttons and dials and things. Regardless of the microscope type, the students were not able to do tasks that were different from things that you'd expect to have on a teaching microscope. So things like complex startup or shutdown procedures or digital imaging. Again, this is pre-training here. Students fared a little bit better on tasks that were more familiar, so things like focusing or changing your objectives. But here we noticed, and you can see the difference in the colors here, we noticed a difference between the students in the 2 classes of microscopes. So the students who were being trained on the more complex, less familiar inverted systems were not scoring as high as those who were using the more familiar systems. So here we can see that we can see the effect of the students' prior experiences that allows them to do some basic tasks, but only to the extent that the scope they're being trained on is similar to the one that they've actually seen before. And we can also see sort of the power of having the pre and post assessments that allows us to know a little bit more about the students' prior knowledge and also to actually quantify the effect of our training. But we didn't just ask practical things. We also asked about student attitudes. So we asked questions like, for example, how confident are you in the microscope on which you will be or were trained? What's your confidence level? And the students could respond however they felt about the microscope. And now the colors are referring to pre versus post training surveys here. So prior to training, most students are saying that they're unable to use the microscope. After training, we were glad to see there was a large increase in student confidence, so the students are feeling much better about using the scope. But what we were really interested in here is a subset of students here who indicated that they had at least some level of confidence in using the scope, even though they'd never probably even seen the microscope and had certainly never been trained on it before. To get a little bit more of information about that, we decided to plot out also their practical scores, so the actual practical assessment from the stuff from previous slide, against their confidence that they self-expressed. Here we can see that students initially, prior to training, mostly have low confidence, and that's pretty correct. They're not able to use the scopes. But there is a population of students here who are overconfident in their actual abilities. Possibly because they're under having the misconception that all microscopes are the same or microscopes are simple instruments. I'm sure that's not surprising to many of the people in the room here. After training, the students' confidence and also their abilities increased. If anything, they might actually be underestimating their abilities a bit, and that could be something interesting to investigate in the future, why students are still feeling unconfident. So we can see here that questions that aren't directly targeting actual concepts or tasks or things like that can still be informative and let us know what students are thinking. Our survey also included questions about basic background knowledge. So in this case, about digital imaging. I don't have the exact questions, but just the topics there. And here, prior to training, we can see that the scores are relatively low. And unfortunately, after training, the scores didn't increase that much. And actually not really to acceptable levels either, in my estimation. So this told us that our training was not working like we thought it was. We were telling them the information, we were teaching it, but certainly some of the students weren't actually learning it. And so this prompted us to then go back and say, well, and try to change our training in a way to improve learning. I'm going to give you one last example here. We also provided the students with a scenario and then asked them a question about how to mitigate selection bias in microscopy. So this was an open-ended response. They could write whatever they wanted in the text box. And then we took that information and we coded it to different categories, which you can see listed here on the left. And a lot of times they were matched to more than one category. Now, the data are a little tricky to parse through here. So just to highlight a few things quickly here, the pre-training responses tended towards things that would improve reproducibility. So like increasing sample sizes or increasing the number of replicates or standardizing your protocol. And these things are all great. They're great, but they don't directly target selection bias. And it's possible that it's because these are the kinds of things that the students get harped on a lot in their lab classes or something like, oh, you need a higher N, you need more replicates or things, or take a good lab notebook. So that's all great and everything, but it doesn't directly target selection bias. After training, the student responses now tended more towards things like blinding or towards making specific rules for how to define where to take images and when you're using a microscope. So these free response questions here, although they're a lot more difficult to collect the information and a lot more difficult to actually analyze it, it can give you more insight into what the students are actually thinking. And with that information, you can then hopefully be able to mitigate misunderstandings or misconceptions then in your training. Okay, so in conclusion, just to highlight a few things and review them, carefully designed assessments can help you measure the impact of your training. It can help you improve and optimize your training. That clearly we found deficiencies in ours, and we wouldn't have known it otherwise. But to do this, your assessments need to be aligned to your learning objectives. So those goals that Sylvie was talking about earlier. And again, this is a whole process of which Sylvie kind of outlined briefly. Again, to know more, Sylvie and Rhonda's workshop. It's amazing. You should go to it. Pre-assessments can help you better understand your incoming trainees. So having an assessment before, not just after, because you can compare the two. And assessing trainee attitudes And using open-ended questions can help you to understand what the trainees are actually really thinking, which can help you to target misconceptions and misunderstandings as well. And remember, finally, you don't have to assess everything. So if what I told you right now, you're saying like, I could never do that with the number of trainings I have to give. You don't have to do everything, but you can start to implement certain parts of this. You can start to assess certain things. You don't have to do everything everywhere all at once. Okay, I would finally like to acknowledge my collaborator, Joe Harsh at JMU, who's an education researcher, and also Rhonda Powell at Clemson, who helped with the coding of the free response data. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to go to our last speaker now, Barbara DeRocha, who will be joining us virtually, and then we'll have our period of discussion and questions.
Go ahead, Barbara. I think we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. So today I will talk to you about the Microcompass, which is a new tool that we have designed to allow us to have a robust, reproducible, and time-saving training. So hopefully it's working or not. Yes, okay. So I'm working at the Advanced Bioimaging Facility at McGill University. That is directed by Claire Brown, and we're located at Montreal in Canada. So we have a wide range of equipment, and we provide a set of services to our users. So we have consultation, one-on-one training, and we support them throughout all their projects. We also transfer our knowledge through workshop or microscopic course, just like the MLMC and so on. So where we go with the Microcompass. So during the pandemic, we weren't allowed to be in the same room as our user, and we wanted to resume training to allow new people to be able to use our microscopes. So we wanted to design a training that is designed as a step-by-step so that they can go on the microscope and be able to be trained without us in the room. So we had some requirements as imaging scientists as well as for the training. So what we wanted is that to have a standardized training that is easy to modify and that is built as modules so that we can change change the modules as we want in the training to have something that is customized for each training. And for the training, what we wanted is that to have a step-like instruction training with straightforward instruction and really easy to follow. So to build that, we have used PowerPoint, we have used as a reference for building the training our inverted wide field microscope, which is a Zeiss one that we have called the Observatory and is running on Zen 2 Pro. It allows to do transmitted light and fluorescence imaging as well as multidimensional acquisition for any kind of sample. So how it is built, the Microcompass. So the overall architecture of the Microcompass is based on 23 main modules that will really guide the trainee throughout everything on the microscope. So the startup procedure, how to do multidimensional acquisition, but also how to manipulate the software and the hardware of the microscope. And there are also support modules that are linked to specific steps within the training so that it's helping, if needed, the users throughout the training. So how it is built. So each module is basically a set of steps that we have used features that are within PowerPoint that is called the section feature. So each section within PowerPoint is in fact a module. we try to have general and short titles so that it's way easier to look at the architecture in the background. And they are designed as independent. So if we want to move a module like further within the training or earlier within the training, we can do that quite easily because they are built independently. So here you have an example of the module to set up the PowerPoint within the computer of the microscope. So it's made of 4 slides, so it's quite straightforward. So how the steps are designed. So each steps that we have is in fact a slide, and each slide is either an information to read or an action to do. So to have something standardized, we have based everything on the same templates with the same background, same fonts, and so on, so that it's way easier to duplicate and do the steps easily like that. The thing is that for the architecture in the background, the title of each slide should be linked to the title of the sections of the modules. And we also have a list of specification to fit the consistency for the layout in the architecture in the background. And we also really want to focus on the accuracy between the text and the image that you have on the slides. So here you have 2 templates. So the one for the portrait or the landscape template of the slides that we're using throughout the training. So now that we have the modules and we have the steps and the slide, how we connect them to build a full training. So how to do that? We basically use buttons and hyperlinks within all the slides throughout the training. So we have designed a navigation bar at the bottom that allows you to go to back and next to each slide. And you also have other buttons that are peers depending on where you are in the training to go into more information on website or to go to support modules. There's also another button that allows you to go back to modules if you go to a specific one and you want to go back to the main training. We also have specific buttons that are within the slides. So this allows people to just focus on modules that they want to do as for their training. Not everyone will go through every possible way to image something, so they will really focus on what they want to do with their sample. So this is, and one thing that is really important is really to just keep on the hyperlink version, so that is allows compatibility with almost everything on PowerPoint and different versions. So here is a small video on how it's working. So it's how to reduce the training. So you can go on, go back when it's done. You go to the next slide and you can just move it. And then you are ready to follow the steps one after the other. So, so this is when you have the training. So now as a trainer, you want to see what is going on the computer of the microscope and what the trainee is doing. So to do that, we wanted to have a communication hub that allow us to have 2 to 3 hours training, even 4 sometimes. And we need to have an option to take over, and the user or the trainee would need to share their screen. So for that, for IT reasons, we have used the Zoom software. And basically what you see here is the training interface. So what they will have on the computer would be the Zen software, so the imaging software on the left side, and side by side, you will have the PowerPoint that has been reduced so that you have always them side by side. So you don't need to juggle between two windows. So this what will be shared by the trainee for the trainer. So the trainer will be able to see what is going on the imaging software, as well as where the trainee is within the training. So within the ABIF, we have the ABAF, we have implemented the microcompass since February 2021. We have held 258 trainings with the microcompass. And we have also run a survey about for the microcompass for our users, and we had 40 answers, and the participants believe that, well, 78% of them believe that is as effective as an in-person training, and 82% of them feel confident to use the microscope independently after the training. So we also developed the microcompass for other microscopes. So we have one for the laser scanning confocal. I'm building one for the lattice light sheet that we have. We also have created some for microscopy courses, so MLMC, and also for workshop for software analysis. So you can really adapt it quite easily for whatever you want to teach. So within the computer of the microscope, the users will have two kinds of microcompass or files. So they will have the microcompass training that is basically mandatory for every new user that are within the facility will need to go through that regardless of their microscopy experience. So this will be the one that I've shown you. And they also have the microcompass reference that is in fact an interface that they will go to individual modules if needed, if they need a reminder or something, and go back to the summary. So so in conclusion, for the microcompass, the benefits that you have is that you have a standardized training for all users. It's really based on hands-on training, and you have faster autonomous users with that. It is really easy to follow and also to guide the users, so it's really straightforward. It's also a great reference for future trainer, and it's also easy to adapt from the equivalent equipment, so from a white shield to a white shield. The challenges that you have is that using the microcompass, when you need to do some troubleshooting on the computer, you just have one point of view, so this could be a bit challenging. Some people find that there is a lack of human interaction when doing the training outside, and the first generation of the training is usually really, well, it's time consuming. So just, I know I'm far, and I just want to just add something. So since we are talking about 500 deck slides, it's a lot of information that you need to compute. So we have created a new app that is running on Excel that is called Microcompass Manager, that in fact have function to go through the PowerPoint and to basically extract all the architecture that you have on the training, so that it allows you to know what is going on, what are the links, and how to do. So it gives you, it facilitates to generate new content. So we are building that so that it's really helped to generate new training easily. So with that, I would like to thank you, everyone, and thank my team, and also everyone that I helped on the training. So if you have any question, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was wonderful. So if there are members of the working group and our speakers want to come up and join us on the chairs here at the front of the room, we'll make sure our virtual presenters are large on the screen as well. And we can have a short discussion and take some questions here, I think, about user training and evaluation. It looked like there were a few online already that we might be able to start with. I think we had one where someone was asking, what is a good strategy for training people who think they are already experts? So where do we start with training the trainer? Anybody have thoughts? You know,
So the best way is to ask them questions, but without trying, it's important not to corner them. So I think asking them questions to actually evaluate their real knowledge is a good idea, and asking them questions related to their project is very important so that they understand that they have some room probably for learning.
Good.
I also agree with Sylvie's giving them space. A little bit of humor goes a long way too. So I have people always, and it's such a relief to work. Awesome. Yeah, I always do the P thing, which creates that weird resonance. And what I say is it's such a relief to know somebody who knows what sampling is and Nyquist is. And I would say I've done that about, I don't know, 20 times. Not one person has known what Nyquist is. So it's amazing. It's a way to use a bit of humor. And then they're like, oh, wait a second, maybe I could use your training. And it just saves a lot of times. So just to affirm what, to say is that, yeah, everybody knows how to use a microscope, but not really, but you do it with a bit of humor.
Perfect, thank you. So I think there was a question for Barbara in the chat about the amount of time that it took to develop Microcompass and how long it takes per instrument to develop that material.
Okay, so the first one, so it took a bit of time because I needed to, well, understand, well, I switched. I was doing mainly confocal during my PhD and working on Nikon. And when I switched to a wide field, which was a ZEISS, I needed to understand what is going on with the training. As you go with the microscope, it's easy to build the training. For this one, I think it took, I guess, 2 months. But it was like from scratch. So basically, as it's, well, it's way easier right now for me to build something. So I would guess, depending on how much you want to implement within the training, it could be quite fast. The thing that is taking the much time is going through the training as a trainer to see where are the steps and the screenshots that you need to take throughout your software, so that, and images that you need to have, so that you can really guide the trainer, the trainees through everything. So I don't have specific time. I know that, for example, if you like, a recent one is that we have changed a light source within our wide field, and it took me just half a day to change everything. So all the screenshots, the information for the lights, as well as everything on the software, because everything is linked. So like that, it's taking this much of time.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Hina, did you have?
In the instructional design field, are there any instructional designers here? Because I don't want to pretend to be an expert, but I know a little bit about this. But the quantitative literature is that for every 1 hour of active learning online or in person, not a PowerPoint slide, but an interactive PowerPoint slide, 30 to 100 hours per hour. So this tells you right away, as a core facility, you feel a little bit of guilt. I do all the time. Oh, I should be doing better. But when you work out the people hours, what's feasible is doing things. It's wonderful that Barbara's doing this, but it's not possible if you're not. Oh, sorry. It's 30 to 100 hours per active hour. And I think Barbara and these types of initiatives, I think it's wonderful that Claire and her group are doing this, but we need to invest more in these sort of collaborative efforts to keep this stuff going. Sorry.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. We're going to move on to talking about boot camps real quick. Barbara, if you're up for answering Jason's question in the chat, that would be great. I think that one was directed to you. So about boot camp training. So a question also in the chat was that not everyone is able to attend boot camp classes, right? There's a limited number of seats, and also many of us can't take 10 days right away from our facilities. Things would fall apart completely, right? To attend these courses. So what are recommendations for similar experiences or learning material in a similarly comprehensive way that wouldn't be a boot camp experience? Anybody have any thoughts?
I can start. I don't have a good answer. Probably course directors can give a better answer. But I would recommend that talk to your course facility manager and all, and figure out if they can do 1 day or a small module training, what you specifically need. But I will stress again that there is a value of getting this hands-on training whenever it's feasible and possible.
Do we have questions in the audience? Oh,
Can I
Sylvie,
say
did you
something?
respond real quick? Yep.
Yes, sorry.
please.
Yes, I think that this is really key. And if you think about the 10 days that you might spend in one of these boot camps, the output is going to be enormous. So in some ways, yeah, probably you have to convince your boss that you need to go there. It's money and it's time, but really at the end, this is your daily life. It's going to make you more confident about what you're teaching, and it's going to make it means that you will portray things in a different way. And then the experience when you're teaching is going to be completely different because you are more confident. You can bring more things to the users, and so they will trust you more. And then this sort of fantastic stuff where you're actually working together instead of against each other is really important. In that sense, I can just flag a little bit that in our course, all the lectures are online for free. So watch that if you want slowly. They're on YouTube as well. But it's really important to that we upgrade our knowledge in microscopy. It's very important, and also in pedagogy. And in the sense, in pedagogy, maybe it's easier. Many universities offer some online courses or some workshops for their teachers. So ask your own university if you can join a pedagogy workshop, for example, and you will learn a lot. And I think that will help you a lot in your training.
Awesome. Thank you, Sylvie. We have lots of hands raised in the room. So I know we've got a question back there and we'll try to get to everybody.
Hi, this is Kristen from the Van Andel Institute. I was wondering if the panelists could mention maybe the top 1 or 2 things that they found incorporating into their training styles that have really helped with knowledge retention and the actual active learning.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Powell from the Clemson Light Imaging Facility. I would invite you to join me and Sylvie's workshop, which is on October 30th through BINA. I think Kate's slide said October 10th. But for me, active learning techniques, which we'll talk a lot about in the workshop, will go a long way towards keeping people engaged during your training. You know, we all in this room probably got used to just being lectured at. We're trying to really encourage you guys to stop doing that and actually involve people in the training.
I don't know if I can handle this. Do you hear me? They can hear me now. I would say I completely agree with active learning. I've learned through 23 years by making lots of mistakes, trying something, realizing it wasn't sticking. You know, lasers were coming through eyepieces all the time. And then the latest iteration we have is it's quite radical for us. We'd always start with samples. Now we start with the experiment. It's all about the experiment. It's all about the mentoring and coaching. Not every facility has this ability because if you have 500 people, it's not possible. We have more like 100 to 150. We meet, we talk about the science, and we bring them through the workflow, and we try to be very supportive, saying, we advise, you're the science, you're guiding the science, you're driving the science, your PI is. So it's very collaborative, and it's all about us working with them and really modeling the behavior rather than using it cookie cutter. And this way it's tailored to the learning and to their needs. And we ask about their needs. What's your background? What's your need? Tailored to the person and to the project.
It's not possible, I know, depending on your volume of training, but I find that what's called distributed practice is also important, not just having one like 4-hour meeting with the person and then they're done, but having multiple shorter meetings. I know that's very tricky in terms of your volume if you have a lot of people coming through to schedule that kind of thing. But in terms of knowledge retention, that's proven to improve that.
This is a good point. One thing we've done too is data cafes. So basically office hours, you can have a themed office hours, have cookies and maybe fruit to bring people in, and then they're there and it's the open-ended questions. They might do a gentle introduction into Image J, but then in that last half hour, stuff comes up about the confocal or does anybody have a light sheet? So I think this idea of trying to be strategic how you use your time. Time is your most precious resource.
Sylvia has her hand up. Maybe she wants to go first.
Yes, I would like to share 2 tips, very practical tips about how to make it effective. For us, we simply refuse to train people who do not have an active project where they're going to be imaging straight away. I think this is a waste of everybody's time if you train people and they don't image immediately. So we just tell them, sorry, are you going on holidays next week? Well, we'll train you afterwards. That is one thing. And then the second thing is that we have implemented that immediately after so the users have a free imaging session, or sometimes 2, depending on the system, the week after the training, but only if they use it then. So this means that they have to practice immediately after the training, and most of them actually, because it's free, most of them book the system and get on, and it means that they get a really hands-on by themselves experience, and they can come back and ask questions. This has been very, very efficient in getting people to use immediately the knowledge that they've had and come up with questions.
Great. This is James Jonkman from Toronto. So Sylvia, when you said that understanding something is not the same as learning it, that was sort of an eye-opener for me. I'd never really thought of it that way, but I've noticed it with my users that they understand what we're saying, and yet later on they haven't remembered it. So I guess I'm wondering, is there a certain in the pedagogy field, is there a rule of thumb for how much students will retain? Like, let's say you teach them 100 things. Do they typically remember half of that or whatever? Because it seems to me that if you teach them 5 things, they're going to remember all 5. But if we go overboard and teach them too many things in one session, then they're going to only remember a certain percentage. So it seems to me it becomes important to limit also how many buzzwords we used. You know, Pina, you said, oh, I want to test whether they know the word Nyquist, but is that even an appropriate word? Now they remember a word, but they don't know the concept of you know, you need enough pixels. If you just say you need enough pixels, maybe they, right? Like, is there a rule of thumb for how many things we should limit ourselves to saying?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I find that quite fascinating. There are some studies about what makes what is the difference between a novice and an expert. And an expert basically sees the enormous pile of knowledge. You're talking about 100. The enormous pile of knowledge, they see this as blocks. So if you allow your users to learn as blocks, they will learn hundreds, no problem. And then it doesn't matter if you say Nyquist or size of the pixels or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's not so much if you introduce, for example, in the Nikon software, it's written Nyquist on the button. So it's very convenient to say Nyquist, because then people see the button and they remember what it is. So it really depends on what, so it doesn't really matter which word you use or what. What is important is that you allow the user to build up the knowledge. This is very much something that has been really well established, and that Rhonda also speaks about in our workshop. But you build the knowledge slowly. So you make a block, and then you assess, is that block okay? You test the user, you ask them questions, and then you see, okay, the block is okay. Tick the box and add another block. If you do like this, people can learn hundreds of things, no problem. But if you shower them for 3 hours with hundreds of small things one after the next, there's no way they are going to remember. That's the key. One of the keys. All this is pedagogy, basically. So all these are tips and tricks that have been studied for a long time, and that work.
Hi, this is Alison Northam Rockefeller. Hello, everybody. Loving your talks, as usual. And I've learned a lot. I really liked Chris's suggestions. Just to add one, well, I've got 2 things to say. So the first, just to add one tip. So in 2020, I was pulled into writing this ginormous confocal tutorial by a certain James Jonkman and Claire Brown. And at first I was like, why have I done all this work? But then I was like, well, I'm going to use it. So now before we train anyone on a confocal, we make them read the protocol, the tutorial, and then we give them a 20-question multiple choice test. And if they get more than 75%, we move straight on to the training. If they don't get 75%, then we ask them to read it again and we test them again. And that really shows who knows what they're talking about before, and then they don't question it. But the thing it's helped us to do, which really arose out of it, is it helps us to focus on the areas that they don't understand, so that during the training, we can make the training more effective and focus on those areas rather than the stuff they did know. So that was point number one. But now I'm getting back to the point I've been waiting to say for about the last 10 minutes, which is regarding the courses. So clearly, I am a fan of in-person courses because I've just been teaching on it for 10 years and directed it for 5 years. And I understand not everyone can go. I'm not going to say that that's possible, but I would say that anyone who might have that opportunity ought to argue with their institution of how valuable it will be, because I don't think there really is any substitute. And we've tried to keep the courses short. This has been an argument with the MBL, who want us to increase it to 2 weeks so that it won't be so intense. And we've said, no, people can't take 2 weeks out of their time. So we've kept it short, but more to the point, there's funding available to come as well with the BINA funding, very important. We actually brought in Viantha from South Africa all the way. We managed to find funding for her whole thing to attend. So don't be put off because of that reason. And she's the first to say how, you know, important it's been. But the other thing, and I just want to, there was the one point of there aren't many places, it's hard for people to get in. And I just want to reiterate here that for those of us selecting the people to attend, who is going to attend the courses, we look for amplification effect. And what I mean is who's going to pass on this knowledge to others. And I can say, and this is not because of me, more because of Jörg Beversdorf, I would say there hasn't been a core facility staff member who's been turned down since we've run the course, except one who'd just been to an identical course elsewhere. So if you're showing that you're going to transfer that knowledge, I think it's a very high chance you'll get onto these. And I just think it's great to make the time for them, if you can.
Hi, Genevieve from McGill University. I'm wondering what steps can be taken to expand training and education resources to accommodate for different learning needs, specifically in the case of neurodivergence, and just more in a broad sense. How would you propose using these strategies to destigmatize neurodivergence in academia as a whole?
So I'm going to say on behalf of the working group, this is a place where we're trying to interface very much more tightly with the diversity and inclusion working group. And it's an area where we would absolutely invite people who are interested in contributing in this way to please contact me and Kate and figure out how we can work together to broaden the reach of what we're trying to do as a working group in particular. And it's something that's under active discussion right now, but I'm really curious to hear what everyone else has to say.
I think Pina and I are both interested in speaking to this. I identify as neurodivergent. I talk about it in the workshop. It was really important for me. I would say, again, so certainly active learning techniques can be geared towards all different types of learners, right? And I also mentioned that it's fine for me in a training to recognize that I can ask people at the beginning if there are things that will make them feel more comfortable today. That's a really easy accommodation that you can make for everybody. And a lot of times you'll do that for one person and it will help everybody. And I do talk about in the workshop, again, hey, some people might want to take a break or some people might want to fidget a little bit. And part of that as a trainer is you just need to move past that and not take it personally. So Pina, you probably want to talk to this too.
I'm also neurodivergent, and one big difference is just giving people the voice. I love that idea of, are you comfortable? Do you want to keep going? Being a bit flexible. Another thing we do is a pre-training survey always. And we don't just, we say, I feel comfortable with, and then we send off saying the response to this is completely confidential. But if you identify or have a learning disability or you're going through a stressor, You don't want to say what it is, but you can let us know here and we will accommodate. And it's amazing. Just having that sentence there, I would say, transform what we do. And it also means as a trainer, you're focused on the learner and you're always a learner too, so the idea is really seeing the world through the eyes, the empathy Beth and others have talked about, being empathetic. It's hard, right? A lot of people here are stressed, too much to do in too little time, but I think we're all here because we want to help. And I can tell you when you have that genuine connection, really mentoring, I can't think of anything better. That's why I keep doing this every day.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think a lot of the techniques that are shown to be to increase inclusivity in terms of teaching are also things that just improve teaching in general or learning in general too. So things like having shorter training sessions, shorter meeting times, having multiple ways of delivery. So having the students watch a video, or they can read it, or they can get it in multiple different ways. That provides accessibility for everybody, and sort of just lifts all the ships.
And this might not make me popular. One big thing we did in our courses was we reduce the cognitive load. We keep the hours shorter. We try to keep it to 9 to 5. It might not seem the hardcore way of learning, but I think best practices in education research show that chunked learning is better. And if anything, intensive workshops are not shown to be as effective as longer spaced out intervals. Not everybody, we don't have that option. It's not really practical, but let's just say you're at home, you can't afford to leave, you're not a core facility person. Chunked learning, small workshops, targeted workshops, it's not cookie cutter, but in general are better for learning and learning stickiness and changes in behavior.
So yeah, I can go ahead. So Chloe, University of Ottawa. I don't think it's a question, more a comment, but I hear, and being on the back is actually very nice to see how it goes. When I hear that people are write in the chat, how long does it take? How can I do this, etc. We ask the same question when we go to digital imaging and image analysis, by the way. So pedagogy is like this big box, like image analysis in computer science, that biologists might actually be scared of or not be trained for. But we are all, or we have been at one point researchers or students, and we know that if we want to move forward, we need also to look for the information. So when we have a scientific question, we are not afraid to look for papers and to spend hours and hours on papers. But it seems that we are more reluctant to look for papers about pedagogy. And again, thank you, Sylvie, for your papers. It's wonderful. It's really eye-opening. So pedagogy or image analysis, or all these things that we are not comfortable with, they are like, new scientific questions. We need also to take the time. It's not going to be tomorrow that your training will be different, but it's also a process, and we need to spend time to read, to look for the information, to go to the workshops. And yeah, it's going to take time. I'm going to be maybe a little bit rude, and I apologize for that, but it's your job. We are creating our job. We do not have, it's like pedagogy. You need to define your goals. You had a job description that says you need to train students on a microscope, and it's too broad. So maybe you need to redefine what training means for you, but it's also your career that is there. It's also your marks. It's also how it's difficult to evaluate the core facilities or core staff, but maybe the quality of the training. When you have more and more students that will tell their PIs, "Why, I got something I really learned this time," that will make the difference. And that's your job and the evaluation and how the PIs and the student. So basically, the quality of the output that will be way better. So at one point, the time that you are going to spend on it, it's actually worth it.
Thank you, Chloe. All right, I think we are at our last question here. And Sylvie has some last comments.
Respond and then we'll.
Sylvie, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with what Chloe said, and it's a warning at the same time. If you put your little finger in pedagogy, you will, because it is so efficient that when you start seeing the results, you're going to be 100% convinced that this is the way to go. At the same time, you don't have to be scared about starting, because you can just identify, let's say you do your training and you realize that one user after the next, there is one thing in your training that simply doesn't go home and that most people do not get. Just start with this little thing. Make a goal, write some learning objectives in the correct way, and then try to assess. And this will teach you how to improve your training on that particular thing. So just start small. It will not take so much time. Write the goals, write the learning objectives, and then do the assessments. And then you will learn how to slowly improve. Try to go into a pedagogical course, and you will see that it doesn't take a lot of time, and it certainly makes things a lot more enjoyable and also a lot more effective.
Thank you so much. I want to thank our, does Chris have a? Perfect.
Really, really quick. So if I'm reading the room, this has been a really, really, a discussion that's really, really sparked off, and everyone's been. We do spend so much of our time training and spend so much of our time teaching, and certainly for core facility staff. I really want to make a shout out for the training and education working group, okay, because they do exchange of experiences I've learned so much being involved with this group, and I was pretty much quiet here because I keep quiet. I learn so much, through that. I also contribute, but please get involved. There's a working group that can expand to any number. Okay, so just get involved if you're interested in these themes, and the exchange of experiences of every single one. As I've learned so much in every single one of those as well. So get involved. I can see there's a lot of interest in these themes. So that's my shout out for the working group. Please get involved.